إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. To begin, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has united us with our brothers here, Masjid bin Abbas, ma ikhwatinana fillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala, our brothers whom we love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to hear something of mutual advice concerning the truth and mutual advice concerning patience upon the truth. Today is the 27th of Dhul Hijjah in the year 1436 after the Hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the subject of tonight's discussion is something of tremendous importance, and it is connected to the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ. The statement of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنُ قَوْلًا مِمَّنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And who is better than a person, who is better in statement than a person who calls and invites to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and does righteous deeds, meaning their deeds, their actions match their statements, and not calling the people to the paradise with their mouths while their actions are calling them to the fire. And مِمَنْ دَعَا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا was better in statement than the person who calls to Allah while doing righteous deeds. وَقَالَ إِنَّنِي مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. And he says that I am amongst those who have submitted sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The affair of a da'wah, of calling the creation to the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is an affair that we are extremely negligent in, all of us. In calling our neighbors and our colleagues and our co-workers and our relatives, more importantly, to this beautiful religion, something that there are very few amongst the Muslims, except that they are negligent concerning it. And this is a good attitude for a person to have as regards any aspect of his religion, no matter what he is doing, no matter how much he is doing it, that he is negligent and he has fallen very short of the mark. And we know that a Muslim calls to Allah tabarak wa ta'ala with his statements and with his actions, and the person who is not able to call to Allah tabarak wa ta'ala with his statements, then the least that he can do is withhold his heart from the creation and be a good example. We know that Allah's religion that is spread through the example of the merchants that travel to the ends of the earth, up and down the Silk Road, all the way to the ends of China, all the way to Muslim Spain and beyond, bringing the religion of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala to the reaches, to the far reaches of the Caucasus Mountains in the city of Bab al-Abwab, Darband, all the way to the Yemen, all the way to the borders of China and beyond, all the way to the ends of Africa in the first 100 years of Islam. and the conduct of the armies of the Muslims and the merchants of the Muslims made the disbelievers rush into the religion of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala in droves. And the Muslims in their early generations, on account of their character, on account of the strength of their intellect and their ability to use simple evidences that are found in the Quran and found in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, were able to convince the creation to embrace Allah's religion. As is found in the statement of Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala have mercy upon him, Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith, the preeminent Imams of the early Tabi'een, Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, he said that the greatest victory that the Muslims were ever blessed with in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what would a person say? The greatest victory. I said the greatest victory the Prophet ﷺ was given. What was it? What would you say? The conquering of Mecca. That would be a very good answer. What else do we have? Badr. It's a very good answer. He said the greatest victory the Muslims were given in the time of the Prophet ﷺ was the Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, was the peace treaty of al-Hudaybiyah. He said because لما وضعت الحرب أوزارها تفاوض الناس في المنازعة والحديث. Because once a peace treaty was signed, the people started to engage in mutual discussion and disputes with one another. وقبل ذلك كان إذا التقوا اقتتلوا. Before that, whenever they would come in contact with each other, the tribes of the Arabs would come in contact with the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they would fight. It was always fighting. You don't want to hear anything they had to say. And so when the peace treaty occurred, it allowed the people to engage in conversation and dispute with one another. فما بقي أحد يعقل شيئا تكلم في أمر الدين إلا دخل فيه. At that time there did not remain a single person who had any aql, who had the ability to the slightest ability to understand anything, who was spoken to about this affair of Islam except that they entered into it. And he mentioned as a proof for that there were roughly around 1,000 men with the Prophet ﷺ when they went for the Umrah. And the Prophet ﷺ, when they went for the Umrah that they were blocked from, when they were going to Mecca and they ended up signing the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, that he took the majority of his able-bodied men with him to protect him. They were going for Umrah, so they didn't have weapons with them and these sorts of things. So they needed able-bodied men, strong men, in case the enemy wanted to be treacherous, to be able to protect the Prophet ﷺ. And when they entered Mecca, less than 3 years later, they had an army of well over, I believe he said 10 or 20,000. Meaning that the number of men, of able-bodied men, from the time of the beginning of the da'wah of the Prophet ﷺ until that time, that they were around 1,000 in number, and they had multiplied 10 or 20-fold in the span of less than 3 years between the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and the conquest of Mecca. Why? Because there was no obstruction. A person wouldn't be laid to the sword for proclaiming his religion. And the Prophet ﷺ, before that, when he sent the Qur'an, there were over 50 of them in number. When he sent the Qur'an, when he sent his ulama, when he sent the scholars to call the creation to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, and they were slaughtered by the treacherous tribes of the Arabs. They went unarmed. They were slaughtered to the last man. And all they wanted to do was call to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ has seen on a number of occasions, and his companions has seen on a number of occasions, and the hostility that the creation had to the da'wah. And this was something that they knew was going to change everything. أَجَعَلَ الْآلِهَةَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا إِنَّ هَذَا لَشَيْءٌ عُجَابٌ. He's going to make all the deities invalidated and proclaimed there's only one deity. Indeed, this is something that is astonishing. This is something that is astonishing. The deities that they worshipped, they believed played some type of role in bringing about benefit and repelling harm from them by being intercessors with Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. They had a very strong belief connected to these deities. They were ahwal shaytaniyah, they were devils that took residence inside of their deities and performed feats and miracles and these sorts of things. And they would hear deities speaking to them, and these idols and so on and so forth, and they believed that there was something supernatural about them, and there was something from the alim and ghaib, from the world of the unseen, from the shayateen, from the devils. As Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He said, Alam ahad ilaykum ya bani Adam alla ta'budu shaytan innahu lakum aduwwun mubin. Have we taken a covenant from you, all sons of Adam, that you do not worship shaitan? Some of the scholars of tafsir, they said whatever is worshipped besides Allah is the worship of shaitan. And so the shaitan had his way with these people and had confused them and had deluded them. And they had left the religion of Ibrahim for a short period of time in the Hijaz, in the area around Mecca and Medina and the likes. As is mentioned by the scholars of history, that the first, and is mentioned in the Sirah of the Prophet ﷺ, in the authentic Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the first to bring idols in the Arabian Peninsula was Amr ibn Luhay al-Khuzai. And we know that this man lived around 200 or 300 years before the Prophet ﷺ, meaning that they were upon the religion of Ibrahim 300 years after Isa ibn Maryam. The Arabs were still upon al-Hanifiyya. They were still upon al-Hanifiyya, showing you what? Showing you the nature of the Arabs and why Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala chose them to be the carriers of the message to the rest of mankind. It's a matter of creed. Harb al-Kirmani rahimahullah ta'ala, in his tremendous book Ijma' al-Salaf al-I'tiqad, the consensus of the Salaf in creed, he mentioned, as Ibn Qayyim mentions in length verbatim from him in his book Hadi al-Arwah ila Bilad al-Afrah, that from the creed of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah is to believe in Fadl al-Arab, in the virtue of the Arab, that the Arab as a group of people, that they had a tremendous deal of virtue that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala had endowed them with, that made them from those that Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala chose to carry the message to the rest of mankind. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he has some tremendous speech of why that is. And he said this is because virtue and karam and fadl, inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The person who has the most karam with Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala is the one with the most taqwa. He said, وَمَا تَقْوَى إِلَى الْعِلْمُ النَّافِ وَالْعَمْلُ الصَّالِحِ. And what is taqwa except for beneficial knowledge and righteous action? And the Arabs, they had, concerning the fadl of knowledge, because they were an unlettered people, they had strong memories, because they didn't write things down. So they had very strong memories. And they had what? Fasahatul lisan and quwwatul bayan. They had eloquence in speech. And the most eloquent and clear of languages. The most eloquent and clear of languages. And the strong ability to express themselves in exactly what they meant. The Arabs had thousands of words. Some of the scholars said around 2,000 words for swords, for different types of swords. They had very detailed language. You look in books like Adab al-Katib by Ibn Qutaybah, and some of the books of the early scholars of Islam, some of the ma'ajim of al-Lugha, and the Arabic language is extremely detailed. Quwwatul bayan. So this is a virtue connected to knowledge. The ability to understand, they have simple understandings. The ability to memorize and the ability to express what you know. And so they had this to a degree that was beyond what other nations had. And when it came to righteous deeds, that they were known for their generosity, and they were known for their adl, they were known for their justice, they were known for their kindness to their guests and the likes of these things. And they were known to not oppress the creation, and not to lie against the creation, and the one who will not lie against the creation will not lie against the one that is greater than the creation. And so Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He sent his Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam with very strong and very effective logical evidences to call the creation to three fundamentals that are the basis of the entire religion and the knowledge of the entire religion. I want to read something of benefit in the time that we have from Shaykh Abdul Rahman ibn Nasir al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala in his book Al-Riyad al-Nadira في أن الأنبياء صلى الله عليه وسلم بيّنوا للناس غاية البيان العلوم العقلية والنقلية, which is the fact that the prophets and the messengers clarified to people with the clearest explanation knowledge that is connected to logical evidences and knowledge that is connected to scriptural evidences as regards the oneness of Allah, as regards the belief in the truthfulness of the prophets and the messengers in general, and the messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in particular, and the belief in the day of judgment. These are al-matalib al-aliyah. These are the highest objectives of the religion. They are the highest objectives of the religion that the prophets and the messengers alayhi salatu wasalam came to explain to the people. So we're going to hear the method that is used in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to call the creation to Allah's religion. And we hope that we take some of it to memory and some of it to heart and employ some of these very simple tactics, and you will be surprised. You will be surprised how a very simple conversation with a relative, a very simple conversation with a co-worker or a neighbor about very simple aspects of your religion can have a tremendous impact upon them. And a person should be patient with those that he says that he cares about. There's a tremendous narration that is found in the tafsir of Ibn Kathir that is from the Musnad of Imām Ahmad, and the tafsir of the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala describing the believers in Surah Al-Furqan, he said, وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. There are those who say, "Oh our Lord, make for us from our offspring and our wives the coolness of our eyes." And the narration says that we were sitting, Jubair ibn Nufair, he said, we were sitting one day with al-Miqdad ibn al-Aswad, فمر به رجل فقال طوبى لهاتين العينين التي رأتا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, may Allah bless these two eyes that saw the messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم. والله لو وددنا لو رأينا مثل ما رأيت ولو شهدنا مثل ما شهدت. By Allah, we would have loved to have seen what you saw and witnessed what you witnessed. فاستغضب. He became extremely angry when the man said that to him. He said, ما يحمل رجلا أيتمنى محضرا غيبه الله عنه. What would compel a man to wish to see something Allah prevented him from seeing? والله لا يدري لو شهده كيف يكون فيه. By Allah, he doesn't know, had he witnessed what we witnessed, how he would have responded, how he would have been in those days, in the early days of Islam, when Islam was something very strange. He doesn't know how he would have been. لقد رأى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أقواما لقد رأى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أقوام أكبهم الله على مناخرهم في جهنم. He said, by Allah, some people saw with their eyes the messenger of Allah, and Allah cast them on their nostrils in the fire. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala cast them in their nostrils in the fire. ما صدقوه, and they didn't believe in him, and they didn't accept what he came with to be the truth. He said in those days, a man, he would embrace Islam. وَقَدْ فَتَحَ اللَّهُ قُفْنَ قَلْبِهِ لِلْإِيمَانِ. And Allah would have removed the seal from his heart so that he would believe. وَأَبُوهُ وَأَخُوهُ وَإِبْنُهُ كَافِرٌ. Or his father or his brother or his son remained as a kafir. وَهُوَ يَدْرِي أَنَّ حَبِيبَهُ لَوْ مَاتَ دَخَلَ النَّارِ. And he knows that if his loved one dies, he'll be in the fire. He's going to go to hell. فَكَيْفَ يَقِرُّ عَيْنُهُ. And how can his eye ever find satisfaction وَهُوَ يَعْلَمُ أَنَّ حَبِيبَهُ فِي النَّارِ. When he knows his loved one is in hell. He said, these are the people that Allah said about them, والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. Now Allah said this verse about them. And make the dua, or Allah, make our wives and our offspring the coolness of our eye, and make us leaders and examples for the people of taqwa. And so without a doubt, knowing this method is something that is very important. So if a person was going to wait for another Muslim to call his disbelieving mother to Islam, his mother would probably die before he had that opportunity, or before another Muslim came across his mother and called her to Islam. And if he has children that are not Muslim, or even children that may have left Islam because they never really understood why they were Muslim, as we find sadly the case with some of the Muslim youth, and he wants to call them back to Islam and make sure that they understand what Islam is and why we are Muslim and the likes of these things, he needs to have a method. كيف يقر عينه وهو يعلم أن حبيبه في النار? How could his eye will find coolness if he watches his loved one go to the hellfire? The Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, وَبَيَانُ ذَلِكَ عَلَى وَجْهِ الْإِجْمَالِ وَالْإِخْتِصَارِ أَنَ الْعُلُومِ قِسْمًا. He said, to explain this method in general, and then in general and with brevity, when we say that everything that is to be known that is beneficial is of two types: ulum sam'iyya, any knowledge that is transmitted by narrative from one person to another person, تنبني على صدق المتكلم وبيانه, that is based upon the truthfulness of the person who is speaking and the ability to express what must be conveyed. وعلوم عقلية, a knowledge that is logical, that is known by logic, a knowledge that is known by logic. So our religion is built upon logical evidences. Upon what? Upon logical evidences as regards the general precepts and tenets of our religion, but the details of our religion is built upon ulum sam'iyya, is built upon narrations, is built upon al-ikhbar, what the prophets and the messengers and what our prophet and our messenger alayhi salatu wasalam informed us of. So the belief about Allah and the truthfulness of the messengers and the belief in the Day of Judgment is known by logic. It can be known by logic, but the details of the belief in Allah, the details of the belief in the prophets, and the details of the belief in the Day of Judgment, like the exact blisses of the people of the paradise, and the fact that the resurrection will be with the physical bodies along with the souls, and the likes of these things, is something that is known by خبر موثق عن نبي معصوم. It is known by validated information, authenticated information from an infallible messenger. And so the basis, the foundation is established with logic. He says, as for the first, فَإِنَّهُ لَا أَصْدَقَ مِنَ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ قِيلًا وَحَدِيثًا. As for the detailed information in the religion that is based upon, that is the further details of those logical things that are connected to belief and worship and connected to any interpersonal dealings and so on and so forth, it is logical to love justice, it is logical to love mercy, these sorts of things. But then the details of what is just, what are the rights of the people? If it was a guessing game to leave it up to people to come up with what is justice and what is mercy and what is kindness and what is this and what is that, everybody will have their own rendition, their own version of these things. And so the details of these things were brought by the prophets and the messengers. The details of these things were brought by the prophets and the messengers. So as for the information, as of the first type, that which came by way of as-sam' and naql, by transmission from the prophets and the messengers, as regards the details of belief and the details of worship and so on and so forth. And there is no one that is more truthful than Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. And there is none for mankind more truthful than the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in their statements and their narratives. وَلَا أَعْظَمَ وَأَوْضَحَ مِنْ بَيَانِ اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. And there is none that are greater in clarifying than Allah none for mankind greater in clarifying than the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In order, as the scholars they mention, for those who say that certain things that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with, that there is another interpretation other than what is apparent from those things. They want to wage a war of interpretations of Islam, how we interpret Islam. Everybody has their own interpretation of Islam and their religion and so on and so forth. Then the scholars they mention that in order to convey something of benefit, you have to have three qualities. The first is you have to have knowledge of the thing that you are conveying. And is there anyone who knew better about Allah's religion than the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? The second is that you have to have the intention to convey. If a person doesn't want to have a conversation about something, he's not going to have a conversation about it. And a person who doesn't speak from the heart is not going to reach another person's heart. You have to have the intention. You have to have the goodwill towards the people. You have to want the good for them. You have to want to convey the message. You have to have the aspiration, the ambition to do so. And is there anyone who had an ambition greater than the ambition of the Prophet ﷺ? And the third is you have to have the ability to express, to phrase your words, because you can know something and you can want to convey it to others, but you might not be the most eloquent person, right? You might not have the ability to express in words what you want to convey. It's so strong inside of your heart. It is something that you're really serious about, that you know with certainty, but the ability to express it is not there. But the Prophet ﷺ was sent بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ, the clear Arabic tongue, and he had the clearest ability to express himself, alayhi salatu wassalam. And so the information that came in general and in detail from Allah and the Prophet ﷺ is as such. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has infinite perfect knowledge. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala wants the good for the creation, but He is more magnificent than forcing them to do anything that they don't want to do. La ikraha fi ad-din, there is no compulsion in the religion. The religion is that clear. Allah doesn't need to force anyone to be a Muslim. And Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has expressed the most clear of speech in teaching the creation about Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that which He loves and that which He is pleased with and that which He hates and that which He is displeased with. And the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with the further details of that. So everything that came from Allah and the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was conveyed to the most meticulous level with the clearest and most beautiful of speech. وقد تكفل الكتاب والسنة على وجه التفصيل ببيان جميع ما يحتاجه العباد من العقائد والأخلاق والأعمال والحقوق والمعاملات تفصيلا وتوضيحا. And so the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has undertaken the task in detail. You know what? In detail. Because the details is that which is found in the text. It is found in the text of clarifying everything that the people are in need of as regards their creed, as regards their akhlaq, the morality and character, as regards their actions, as regards the rights of one another, as regards the mu'amalat, the interpersonal dealings, tafsilan wa tawdihan, elaborating them meticulously and clarifying them. لو اجتمعت العقلاء كلهم من أولهم إلى آخرهم لم يقدروا أن يأتوا بشيء يقاربه في الحسن والتوضيح والإحكام والتفاصيل الصادقة عن أمور الغيب وعن الأحكام الشرعية والمعاملات بين الخلق على اختلاف مراتبها. If every intelligent person was to gather together from the first of mankind to the last of mankind, they would not be able to bring the type of details and their beauty and in their clarification and their precision and in the genuine meticulous details that are found in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as regards the affairs of the unseen, the names and the attributes of Allah, the actions of Allah tabarak wa ta'ala, the Sunnah al-Lahi al-Kawaliyah, how Allah deals with the creation. And they will not be able to bring the details of the Day of Judgment. Look at the details that we have concerning the belief in the Day of Judgment. belief in the knowledge of the unseen as regards the world of the angels and the world of the jinn and the shayateen and so on and so forth. What we know about any detailed affairs of the world of the unseen, any what happened in the past or what happened in the future, concerning the ashratu sa'ah, the signs of the hour, the portents of the final hour, and the likes of these things. That is something that is not known by way of intellect. It is only known by way of khabrun muwathaq or mawthuq an nabiyyin ma'soom, by validated information from a truthful and infallible messenger, alayhi salatu wassalam. So scholars, they mention that in general this is how knowledge is gotten, by three ways. And the knowledge is gotten by the senses, by the five senses, by physically witnessing, observing, tasting, smelling, seeing, feeling, those sorts of things, by the senses. And knowledge is gotten by logic. There are things that are incorporeal, that don't have a physical form, that they are known, right? 1 + 1 = 2, right? 3 × 3 = 9. That's aql, right? That's aql. And then there are things that are known by truthful information from a trustworthy source. You never met your great-great-great-great-grandfather, but perhaps somebody told you about him. Your great-great-great-grandfather, he was yay tall, his eyes looked like this. He was tall, short, fat, skinny, whatever he was. And he was a smart person. He was good with his hands, you know. Whatever you know about the history, about your ancestry, so on and so forth, it came from truthful information from a trustworthy source. And so you believe it. You never saw Asbahan, you know Asbahan exists. You never saw Wak Island, but if somebody discovered Wak Island, and they said, look, these are the daffodils, a picture of the daffodils on Wak Island, you say, that's interesting. Right? You will say, I won't believe it until I see it myself. Right? So a person who gets trustworthy information who gets truthful information from a trustworthy source, this is from the means of learning. This is from the means of learning. And so when the atheist philosophers came in more recent times and from the earliest of times, and they said that we won't accept anything, of knowledge except for that which we can physically observe in the material world. They say that you have brought attention to your extreme ignorance, that you have taken one of the most powerful ways of learning and conveying information, and you have ignored it, and you have divorced reality. Whatever the case, the detailed information about these affairs is known only by way of, when it's come in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not known by way of philosophy. It's not known by way of mysticism and dreams and visions and so on and so forth. A person can't come and say, my sheikh had a dream last night and he saw the angel Jibreel and he looked like this, and the angel Jibreel told him Kada. You know, my sheikh, he's been sitting in the corner in the dark saying Allahu, Allahu for the last 10 years, and then, you know, he had a vision. He was taken on the back of a big bird into a garden, and he saw this one and that one, and they said they were Abu Bakr and Umar, and they told us something about our religion that nobody ever knew before. Right? Our knowledge, the details of our religion is known by way of the information that came authentically from Allah, from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there is no way to know the details of our religion as regards worship, as regards creed, as regards the unseen, as regards morality or anything of the sort, except that which is in agreement to the Book and the Sunnah and the understanding of the early generations of Islam. So this is the first thing. And the information that is known by way, the detailed information that is known by way of, a sama' and naql, by way of truthful information from a trustworthy source. And what the Muslims have of a method for preserving the historical record, the knowledge of a jarh wa ta'deel, and of what narrators are acceptable, what narrators are unacceptable and admittable, how a hadith is authenticated or declared to be weak and inadmissible as an evidence, or so on and so forth, is a method that no other nation ever had anything comparable to. The isnad is the silah of the mu'min, and the chain of narration is the weapon of the believer. Even some of the worst of the Orientalists, like Bernard Lewis, admitted that there is no method that exists amongst mankind in any generation that was more, that was stronger and more valid than the science of hadith in corroborating and improving the historical record. And what the Muslims had of the historical record, and it was something that was even admitted by the disbelievers. And however, today we find the Orientalists and those that are from the Afraq and from their spawns in Cambridge and Harvard and the major universities studying the science of hadith to try to dismantle Islam, to wage what they themselves have termed to be called the hadith wars. The hadith wars. That's what they said. That's what they said. The hadith wars. This is something out of the major think tanks, military think tanks. The hadith wars, to promote an alternative set of text, of inauthentic text, on key topics that are used by the people of innovation, like democracy and quote-unquote women's rights and our interpretation of Islam and these sorts of things. We're going to promote an alternative set of text, and those who are promoting an alternative set of text on major issues that are connected to vital national security interest. Right? Or they should say that is connected to increasing our profit margins in our sales. So this is something that we must value as Muslims, and we must understand as Muslims. And we must be more adamant as Muslims in studying our religion than the disbelievers who are studying our religion to dismantle and destroy it. So this is the first type of knowledge. The second type of knowledge, and this is the majority of what is found in the text, the second type of knowledge is not something that is outside of the text, but it is something that is found in the text of the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is a logical evidence. This is something very important to understand. The logical evidence is for calling to Tawheed, and the logical evidence is for proving the truthfulness of the prophethood of Muhammad ﷺ, and the belief in the Day of Judgment. It's very important to understand the method that was used by Allah and used by the Messenger of Allah ﷺ in calling the creation to Allah. Because the vast majority of the groups of deviation, the reason that they deviated from the time of the Jahmiyyah to the time of the Mu'tazila to the time of Al-Ghazali, to the time of the Ash'a'ira, the extreme Ash'a'ira, and who were the new Jahmiyyah like Ghazali and those that were similar to him, they deviated by way of using what they thought was philosophy and logic to debate with the kuffar on issues like the existence of the Creator, and issues like the existence of the Creator, and issues like whether the universe was something created or it always coexisted with the Creator, which is connected to wahdat al-wujud, the belief of some of the ancient philosophers, and who believed that the Creator and the creation is the exact same thing, that manifests itself with the extreme Sufis, who believe that Allah is everywhere, and the likes of these things. They believed in qidam al-alam, that the universe is actually eternal, that it wasn't really brought into existence, and so on and so forth. And so they tried to use what they thought were logical evidences, using the terminologies and using the methods of the Greek philosophers to debate with the Greek philosophers, using the methodologies of, or the terminologies of the philosophers and the atheists to try to disprove what they were upon. And in the time of Abu Hatim and Abu Zur'a al-Raziyayn, in Khurasan, in Marr, and in Balkh, and in the other cities, and where the Muslims were coming into contact with the Brahmins and with the Hindus and with some of the atheist cults of the Eastern mystic religions and so on and so forth, they would get together with them and with the Jews and the Christians inside of the masajid and outside of the masajid, inside of the chambers of the rulers and so on and so forth, and they will say, we are all going to get together, me, you, him, the Buddhist, the Hindu, the Taoist, and we're all going to debate about these affairs of belief using nothing but logic. And we agree that we will not quote our scriptures. None of us. Not any of us will quote our scriptures. And this was a musibah that led to the denial of the attributes of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and the reinterpretation of many of the texts of the religion, and trying to prove to the kuffar that these Muslims were sophisticated and that they had matters of philosophy that they themselves didn't understand, just like the kuffar have philosophy that they don't understand. Big terms with 8 syllables and so on and so forth. You say something real big, it was like, oh, you hear what he said? What does it mean? I don't know, but it's deep. So they want to prove that they were smart. They want to prove that they were sophisticated. And they didn't want to be looked at as Abu Sulaiman al-Khattabi. He said in his book, Al-Ghuni an al-Kalam wa Ahli. He said that cause of deviation of many of the students of knowledge was that if they learned the regular knowledge of the Sahihain, of the 2 authentic collections of Bukhari and Muslim, the authentic knowledge that is found in the general text of the Quran and the Sunnah, that they would be viewed as being just regular people. And so they wanted something to make them elite. They wanted something to make them different. They want to know something that nobody else knows. Have something that nobody else ever figured out, to show how smart they were and to prove their worth, to increase their salaries, the likes of those things. And so it became a major cause of deviation. And ittiba' shawad al-masail, looking for strange issues, trying to talk about things that Allah never revealed any evidence for, and the Prophet ﷺ never spoke about. Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, as for the second type of thing, which are the affairs connected to logic pertaining to monotheism and the oneness of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, the belief in the truthfulness of the prophets and the messengers and their messages, and the belief in the Day of Judgment. He said in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ has produced the strongest of logical evidences for these affairs and physical evidences for these affairs. وَتَنْبِيهُ الْعُقُولِ عَلَى جَمِيعِ الْمَطَالِبِ الْعَالِيَةِ ما لو جمعت جميع ما عند النظار والمتكلمين من البراهين لكان جزءا يسيرا بالنسبة لما في الكتاب والسنة. So that's to the extent that if you were to look at that which is found with the theorists and the rhetoricians and the debaters and the philosophers and so on and so forth of valid logical evidences that they may have, then it is something that is very slight and very little compared to the authentic logical evidences that are found in the Book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What is found in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is with the clearest of speech and with brevity of speech. خَيْرُ الْكَرَامَ بَقَى وَدَلَّ. The scholars, they say the best of speech is that which is concise and straight to the point. The Prophet ﷺ in a few sentences will speak some words that will cause an entire tribe of people to enter into Islam. He was sent with the conciseness of speech sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Another person, in conveying some of the same meanings, may say that which takes an hour or 2. And he didn't fully express everything that was expressed in a couple sentences by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so the Prophet ﷺ came with very clear speech, with that which was straight to the point. وسلامته من الغلط والنقص والاختلال بوجه من الوجوه وهي براهين يفهمها العالم والجاهل والذكي والبليد. He said, and he came with logical proofs and evidences and arguments that were free of defect and deficiency in every way. And they are evidences, logical evidences that were understood by the knowledgeable person, the ignorant person, the intelligent person, and the not so intelligent person. وإذا أردت نموذجا لهذا الأصل فانظر إلى أهم الأصول. If you want to look at an example of this fundamental of our religion, which is that the prophets and the messengers came with the strongest of logical evidences for the most important of affairs. And look at the most important of fundamentals, which are the three things that we mentioned of monotheism, the truthfulness of the prophets and the messengers, and the belief in the Day of Judgment. انظر ما في الكتاب والسنة على كل واحد من هذه الأصول الثلاثة من الأدلة العقلية الفطرية الواضحة البينة. Look at what is found in the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ for each of these three fundamentals of clear, naturally accepted, easily accepted, logical evidences that are very clear. And you have clear, logical evidences that are natural to the disposition of the person to accept. And the Tawheed, as for the first of these things, which is the Tawheed, then look at Al-Hasr Al-Aqli الذي يفهمه كل أحد. الله أكبر الله أكبر. So as for the first of these three things, which is the knowledge of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His names, His attributes, His actions, and His right to be worshipped, he said, then look at the logical evidences, the logical argument that is presented that gives a person a number of options that only one of which is acceptable. And he said, Tabarak wa ta'ala, in Surah At-Tur, in these verses which Tufail ibn Umar al-Dawsi, he said, the first, that Iman, أول ما وقر الإيمان في قلبي. He said, the first that Iman settled into my heart is when I heard the Prophet ﷺ reciting these verses in Salat al-Maghrib. In Salat al-Maghrib, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, he said, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Were they created from nothing, meaning no one created them? أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ. Or did they create themselves? أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Or did they create the heavens and the earth? Or did they create the heavens and the earth? And so these are how many options? Were they created from nothing, meaning did no one create them? They just came into existence from nothing? Or are they the creators? Did they create themselves? أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Or did they create the heavens and the earth? And what is left? There is something that is mafhum muqaddar, and that is implicit, that is unspoken, right? Or do they have a creator? Or were they created? And so this is a logical argument. And you ask the people today, they come up with all sorts of theories about the origin of the universe. And then they throw a bunch of other theories into it. You know, we have the Big Bang, and then we throw in some dark matter, and we throw in this, and we throw in that. And they're building a, $1 trillion machine. They just turn on the $1 trillion machine in France, and what's the country next to it? I think Switzerland or something like that. They got this machine that covers over 50 miles, where they're trying to create the God particle. Right? Well, these fools over here are looking for the gay gene. These fools over here are looking for the God particle. Could the kuffar be deeper and more immersed in disbelief. They're trying to create black matter to try to figure out how did the creation create itself. At the entrance of the laboratory, where they have this machine that spins particles around about 18 or 20 miles, or however many miles it is, they're trying to create this God particle that they call. At the entrance of it is the false deity Shiva, that is the Hindu goddess of creating and destroying. Right? The kuffar are out of their minds. They said there was a big bang, and they said there was dark matter, and they threw some other things in, some other things in, some other things in. Hey, but it was like, I accept that. Why? Because you live in a society of trusted experts. They must know what they're talking about. They're educated, right? They have all those letters behind their names: P, F, D, S, D, J, B, Z, Y to the second power. They must be educated, and they must know what they're talking about. We don't know what they're talking about. They have tens of thousands of pages of data that don't say anything, right? To pull off a hoax, and to have a sludge fund to keep throwing money into their pockets and so on and so forth, while claiming that they're trying to discover something that is indiscoverable because it doesn't exist. Trying to find the origins of the universe. Trying to still prove that there is not a creator for this universe. Allahu Akbar. And so this is a very strong and powerful logical evidence. It's in the fitra of the human being that he knows that there is a creator. He knows that there is a creator. الشيخ السعدي رحمه الله تعالى said فإن كل أحد يعلم علم يقين أنهم قد خلقوا. Every person knows with certain knowledge that they were created from nothing, that they were brought into existence. They were brought into existence. They were created, and they didn't used to exist. وأنهم لم يخلقوا أنفسهم. They did not create themselves. فإن هذه أعظم المحالات. Because to say that no one created you, and to say that you created yourself, is from the greatest of impossibilities. ولا وجد من غير موجد. فتعين أن الله هو الذي خلقهم. Therefore it is identifiable that they were created, and there was a deity who created them, who is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-wise, and so on and so forth. فاضطر العقول إلى الاعتراف بهذا الأمر البين الواضح. And this compels the intellects to accept this affair that is bayyin and wadih, that is very clear. وكذلك إخباره بأن له مثل أعلى. So that was the first thing. The second argument, that is from the most effective of arguments, is that Allah is informed that to Him belongs the highest similitude. As Allah said, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الْحَكِيمُ. That to Allah belongs the highest similitude in the heavens and the earth, and He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. These verses are in Surah Ar-Rum. What is meant by the highest similitude? The highest similitude, we'll read the statement of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, is a form of qiyas. Is a form of qiyas. We find in the books of creed that the scholars, they mention, and that we don't make qiyas for Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. Because qiyas, what is qiyas? Qiyas is an analogy, right? إلحاق فرع بأصل بعلة جامعة بينهما. It is to connect one issue with another issue because of the similar reason or qualities that exist between them, right? So you're comparing one thing to another thing, right? The kuffar, they find new ways, for example, to get high every day, Every day there's a new way to get high, right? There's people that work inside of the penal system and halfway houses and stuff like this. They have stories until whenever, about any new ways that these people are finding to get high, right? If a person was to come and say, okay, I found a way to smoke carpet and get high, and you say, ya akhi, la yajuz, la yanbaghi wa la yajuz. Akhi, you can't smoke that carpet. Stop smoking that carpet. What's your proof? I can't smoke carpet. Show me a verse or show me a hadith that says I can't smoke some carpet. Right? He'll say, so what? It's khamr, it's an intoxicant. Right? It's an intoxicant. وَكُلُّ مُسْكِرْ haram. Every intoxicant is haram. Right? It is an intoxicant. Every intoxicant is haram. So you can't smoke it. Right? So that's called qiyas, because they have similar qualities between the two things. Khamr, which is the asl, right? Which is liquor, so on and so forth. So the people in the early generations, they said, well, khamr is only that which is made out of grapes. So if you make it out of figs, it's alright. They call it nabith, right? You can make it out of figs, right? It's okay. So there are some people in the second generation of Islam that was tipping it back, talking about, well, it's not, it's not made out of grapes, right? It's still khamr. I mean, everything that covers over the intellect, that clouds the intellect, is khamr. And so that's called qiyas. And so qiyas doesn't apply to Allah because laysa kamithlihi shay. So this is called qiyas at-tamthil and qiyas al-shamul. Qiyas at-tamthil is where any vital qualities exist between one thing and another thing that make them similar in ruling to each other. You can affirm something or deny something about something because they're similar to something else. And qiyas al-shamul is very similar to that, and with some certain elements as opposed to any key elements, but some elements, some of the afrad, some elements that have something detailed. But the type of qiyas that applies to Allah is what is called al-qiyas al-awwali, qiyas al-awla wal-ahra. Qiyas al-awla wal-ahra. This is what is mentioned in this verse. وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. Allah said, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. But He also said, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. There is nothing like Allah. There is nothing similar to Allah. There is no similitude to Allah. And then He said in another verse, that to Him belongs the highest similitude in the heavens and the earth. What is meant by that? Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَنَسْتَعْمِلُ فِي أُمُورِهِ أمور المتعلقة بالله قياس الأولى والأحرى وهو أنه كل ما ثبت للمخلوق من صفات كمال فهي للخالق بطريق الأولى والأحرى وكل ما ينزه عنه المخلوق من صفة نقص فتنزيح الخالق عنه أولى وأحرى فله المثل الأعلى سبحانه وتعالى. It is that everything that is verifiable of perfect qualities for the creation, then anything that is perfect, Allah is more deserving of. Like what? Like knowledge. Like knowledge. If you were to gather all of the knowledge of mankind from the first generation to the last of generations and put them in a single person, right? And then in your mind imagine that every person was as intelligent as that person and had the knowledge of that person. Then you say that the knowledge of all the creation at the highest level that you can imagine compared to the knowledge of Allah, kala shay, is like nothing. So the one who is mu'ti al-ilm ahaqqu bihi, the one who gave the creation knowledge, is more rightful to possess it. Is more rightful to possess it. The one who bestowed the creation with strength, la hawla wa la quwwata illa bihi. There is no might or no power except by Him and through Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some of the disbelievers, they said, Man ashaddu minna quwwa awalam yara anna Allah alladhi khalaqahum huwa ashaddu minhum quwwa. One of the disbelieving nations, they said, who is more severe than us in strength? Sounds like the disbelievers at all times. Who is more severe than us in strength? As Allah said in another verse, سَيُحْزَمُ الْجَمْعُ وَيُوَلُّونَ الدُّبُرَ. And all of them will be defeated and they will turn their backs and flee from Allah tabarak wa ta'ala. is more severe than us in power? Don't they see that Allah who created them is more severe than them in power? If you were to gather all the power of the creation from the first to the last of them, and in your mind make them all that powerful, so on and so forth, imagine the highest level of power for the creation. There's nothing connected to that in relation to the power of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. On the Day of Judgment, Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He will grab the heavens with His right hand and the earth with His other hand. ثُمَّ يَحُزُّهُنَّ. The Prophet said then He will shake them. And He will shake them. And He will say, أَنَا الْمَلِكِ أَنَا الدَّيَّانِ أَيْنَ الْجَبَّارُونَ أَيْنَ الْمُتَكَبِّرُونَ. I am the king, I am the judge. Where are the tyrants, where are the arrogant ones now? Are you going to run? Are you going to flee from? Are you going to hide from Allah? And so any quality of perfection, any perfect quality that can exist in any level with the creation, and then it exists as epitome beyond what you can imagine with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is called al-qiyas al-awwali, or qiyas al-awla wal-ahra, al-mathal al-a'la. And so from this is that when you see the greatness of the creation, when you see the greatness of the earth, the enormity, the greatness of the earth, the greatness of the mountains, then you know that the one who created them is even greater. And this is the reality of the statement, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar min kulli kabir. وكبرياء كل كبير تضمحل عند كبريائه سبحانه وتعالى. Allah is greater than anything that people think to be great. That statement, Allahu Akbar, is the basis of the whole religion. The details of the statement Allahu Akbar is the entirety of Islam. Everything in Islam, everything that we believe, everything that we do, all the orders of Allah, all the prohibitions of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, the details of the statement Allahu Akbar. When Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, He said in Ayatul Izn, the end, the last verse of Surah Al-Isra, when He said, وَقُلُ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي لَمْ يَتَّخِذْ وَلَدًا وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ شَرِيكٌ فِي الْمُلْكِ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ وَلِيٌّ مِنَ الظِّلِّ وَكَبِّرْهُ تَكْبِيرًا. And say, Alhamdulillah, all praises to Allah, الَّذِي لَمْ يَتَّخِذْ وَلَدًا, who has not taken a son, has not taken offspring for Himself. He doesn't need the creation. He doesn't give another creature any a shared divinity along with Him, make Him a semi-god, a demigod, so on and so forth. Allah has not taken offspring for Himself. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ شَرِيكٌ فِي الْمُلْكِ. And He has not taken a partner in owning and administering the affairs of the universe with Him. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ وَلِيٌّ مِنَ الظِّلِّ. And He has not taken an ally because of dhil, because of weakness and lowliness. وَكَبِّرْهُ تَكْبِيرًا. And therefore, كَبِّرْهُ تَكْبِيرًا. Declare His greatness with a tremendous takbir. The Imām of the Mufassirin, after mentioning the statements of the Salaf, the Imām of the scholars of Tafsir, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, he said, أي عظمه يا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم تعظيما. And venerate Him and glorify Him, O Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم, بما أمرك أن تعظمه به من قول أو فعل. How do you glorify Him? With what He ordered you to glorify Him with, of statements or actions. How do you glorify Allah with that which Allah has not revealed any authority for? A person who glorifies Allah with that which Allah has revealed any authority for is mocking his Lord. And he is glorifying Allah with that which opposes what the Prophet ﷺ came with. And he is from the greatest of those who is mocking his Lord, Tabarak wa Ta'ala. Glorify Him with that which He has ordered you to glorify Him with, of statements and actions. وَأَطِعْهُ فِيمَا أَمَرَكَ بِهِ وَنَهَاكَ عَنْهُ. And كَبِّرْهُ تَكْبِيرًا. And declare His greatness with a true takbir. Means obey Him in that which He has ordered you to do, and that which He has ordered you to abstain from, that which He has forbidden you from. This is the takbir of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. And so this is something that is necessary for the people. Now when they see the greatness of the creation, that the greatness of the creation fills them with ta'azim of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. It's one of the greatest things, min muharrikat al-qulub, the things that moves and motivates the heart. A person who looks at the signs of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala in the universe around him and nothing moves in his chest. Let him ask Allah for his heart. Let him ask Allah for a heart, because he doesn't have a heart. If he looks at the heavens, if he looks at the skies above him, and their greatness and their vastness, and nothing moves in his heart concerning the greatness of his Lord Tabarak wa Ta'ala, let him ask Allah for a heart, because he doesn't have one. If he looks at the earth, and he looks at the mountains, and he looks at what Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala has put in plain view for the creation, and he doesn't realize the greatness of his Lord Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and then his heart is dead. This is from the bab of al-Mathalul A'la. To Allah belongs the highest similitude in the heavens and the earth. Whatever you can understand and realize about the greatness of the creation, or anything of goodness in the creation, so on and so forth, then Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala haqqu bihi. Allah is more deserving of it. Allah is more deserving of it. The scholars give an example of that. You say, for example, concerning the wisdom of Allah. If a person was to be, what do they call it, an apprentice. If a person was to be an apprentice to somebody, he has a mentor who's teaching him a skill, he's teaching him a trade. And he sees that his mentor always does what he does for a reason. He's a carpenter, right? We'll give you an example that's maybe a little closer to you, right? Your wives are good cooks, right? Our wives are good cooks. We see that in our stomachs, right? You see that we're getting a little bigger than we should be. Our wives are good cooks. Sometimes you're in the kitchen and what happens? Hey, what you just put in there? What you just put in that pot? Right? You have no clue, like, what was that? It's threw some type of vegetable or fruit or something strange in the pot. Right? You've been eating that for 10, 20 years. You never had a clue that she was throwing that in the pot. Right? But you say, she has a reason for that. There's a reason she did that contributes to the to my fatness and to my enjoyment when I eat. Right? That contributes to the flavor of the food. A person, they have a mentor, they're learning a skill from somebody. Every day they go in, the person is teaching them to do something. And everything that they do, they understand there's a reason for. Okay, I understand why you did this, I understand why you did this, I understand why you did this. But then what? One day they do something, inshallah. You know he's a person with integrity, you know he's a person with intelligence, you know he's a person who has what? Who has wisdom. And what he is doing. He does everything for a reason. But you don't understand something that the person does one day, right? The method that they may use one day. But you give them on a human level, you give them the benefit of the doubt. Ibn Qayyim, he said in his book about the Qadr of Allah, he said, why don't the creation deal with Allah like that? When there's something that Allah has ordered them to do and they don't understand the full wisdom of it, or Allah has forbidden them from and they don't understand why it is harmful to them and why they should leave it off, why don't they give Allah the benefit of the doubt? When Allah tests them with something in their life, and they don't understand why they're going through what they're going through, why don't they give Allah the benefit of the doubt? When the highest similitude belongs to Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala. This is an argument that can be used with the disbelievers, and concerning the attributes of Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala, the perfection of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Because the disbelievers are in the habit of limiting the Creator and what He can and cannot know. Can He know things before they occur? And does He have the power to do all things? What does He have the power to do? What doesn't He have the power to do? What is the wisdom behind the Creator? Why does certain bad things happen? And so on and so forth. And so you can use these examples that I found on a human level to say, if you was to give a human being the benefit of the doubt, then why don't you give the benefit of the doubt to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala? And you see that the religion, it calls to goodness, it calls to righteousness, it calls to mercy, so on and so forth. And then you see something in Islam that you say, well, that doesn't seem very merciful. Now, why would you do that? Why would they cut off the hand of the thief? Why would they flog the adulterer, or flog the fornicator, stone the adulterer, so on and so forth? I thought your religion was merciful. That's a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. And it's a mercy. It's a mercy. The Prophet ﷺ said that the establishment of a single punishment, meaning by the Muslim ruler in the lands of Islam, the establishment of a punishment from the punishments of Allah is better for the earth than 40 nights of rainfall. It's better for the earth than 40 nights of rainfall. But now you live in a society where they have, how many people in prison? 2 million people? How many people's in prison in America? I think 2.3 million people in prison in America. A quarter of all inmates are inside the United States of America. Right? A big business. $270 billion business a year, something like that, the prison industry. Right? Life in Islamic society, when you see, okay, well, the guy that commits crimes and atrocities, so on and so forth, he's dealt with in this way. Right? He's executed, he's put to death publicly. Right? He's executed, put to death publicly by the legal Muslim authority in the lands of Islam for his crimes. The person who was the drug trafficker, the person who was a rapist, the person who, to the end of it, the child molester, so on and so forth. Right? He goes through the judicial process in the lands of Islam through the due process that has been laid out by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then he is punished publicly. He is punished publicly if he is found guilty of his crimes, so on and so forth. The person who sees that is what? Rada'an. And it discourages them. It discourages them from ever doing something of the sort. From ever doing something of the sort. I'm just going to read through some of these things very quickly because it's late. As-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, likewise from the logical evidences for the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and for the uniqueness of Allah and His perfection, it's just as He has ordered us to look at the greatness of the creation and how that is the evidence for the Creator, and He more intimately than looking at the creation around us is looking at our own selves. Looking at our own selves. Isn't it astonishing how the disbelievers, the more they find out about science, the more they find out about DNA, the more they find out about these sorts of things, the more they increase in disbelief. Instead of increasing in admiration for the Creator, for the one who designed and organized the human being in the fashion that He has organized, so on and so forth, they increase in disbelief. And the person, he looks at how he is built, how he is made. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala in his book Miftah Dar al-Sa'ada has a tremendous speech about this. He talks about the curvature of the bones and how if the bones were straight, if the bones were straight, not only would you walk very awkward, you would be funny looking and you would be in a lot of pain. Right? The curvature of the bones, they contribute to many different, there are many clear wisdoms of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala in every segment of the creation of the person. A person doesn't know the intricate nature of how he has been assembled until something goes wrong in him. Something goes wrong to him and he goes to all of the mutakhassisin. He's all the specialists, right? 5-6 years in front of the specialist, right? These people went to school forever, and you go in front of them and they run this test and that test and this test and that test, and they still don't know what is wrong with you. Right? There's something that is hidden. They don't know what's wrong with you. Or they find out what's wrong with him and they explain how this thing contributed to that thing, which led to this thing, which led to that thing. And you don't even know what the functions of your organs are. You don't even know what's going on inside of you. You don't think about it. You don't think about these tremendous favors from Allah at all moments, and of the intricate nature of how you are created and put together. And when you looked at Darwinian theory, the survival of the fittest and the origin of species and so on and so forth, that was contrived for economic and political purposes, and the theories of Charles Darwin. And Charles Darwin believed that people were just they were like a primordial mud, and that there was nothing outside of the surface that went any deeper than that. He just believed that the people, they were like a bunch of golems, that they were like a bunch of clay objects that were very, very simple and somehow were moving and so on and so forth. And he built his entire theory around this belief. And the more scientists learn about the construction of the cell and molecules and so on and so forth, and the more they dug deep all the way into the Human Genome Project and so on and so forth, they found nothing but more detail and 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 more detail. And they kept throwing millions and billions of dollars into it, and they found more detail and more detail. They're trying to get to the smallest particle, to the simplest particle. And they still haven't gotten there, despite all of their advances, despite all of their research, so on and so forth. They just find more detail and more detail and more detail. And this is something, so the method here that the Shaykh is saying, you go from that which is external and that which is enormous to that which is minuscule. And all of it is a sign of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that by itself, as one type of evidence, has more things connected to it than you can begin to count. It has more things connected to it than you can begin to count. And from looking at ourselves as individuals, the scholars, they mention, is looking at instinct, human instinct. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala created everything. He gave everything, خَلْقَهُ عَتَى كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلْقَهُ ثُمَّ هَدَى. He gave everything its physical form, and then He guided them internally. Hidayatun ama, with a general guidance, with instinct, right? With instinct. So the male of each species knows to cohabitate with the female of each species, except for some strange human beings. Right? But in general, the person is guided to that which is imperative for their survival. The food that they need to eat, how to protect themselves, how to defend themselves, each creature. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he said we would just talk about this one aspect and bring examples for this one aspect of what Allah has created, which is the instinct that Allah has given the insects and the fish and the birds and mammals and so on and so forth to the end of the human beings. He said this is an ocean without shores. He said this one topic is an ocean without shores. Hadith wala harj. There's one aspect that is very fascinating of it. Of what? There's one aspect of instinct that Allah has created within creatures that is very fascinating. And it is what the kuffar call altruism. Altruism. Altruism is the natural tendency of each species to protect and work with its own species, to look out for the greater good of its own species. There's an example of that in the Quran. The ant is said, يا أيها النمل ادخلوا مساكنكم لا يحتمنكم سليمان وجنوده وهم لا يشعرون. The ant saw the army of Sulaiman approaching. It ran into the hole, and it said, "O assembly of ants, enter into your deep, your masakinakum, and into your homes deep in the earth, lest Sulaiman and his army would trample you without even realizing." That caused Sulaiman Salaf, and he was astonished. Some of the scholars, they mentioned that Allah mentioned that the hudhud could speak in the story of Sulaiman, and that the ants could speak, because the highest of animals with these Semitic peoples and with the nations of the earth before modern communications, the most valuable creatures were birds, for purpose of politics and war and so on and so forth, and business and trade. And they would train birds as messenger birds and so on and so forth, and for scouting purposes and other sorts of things. And the birds were the most valuable, expensive commodity that they had amongst animals with them, right? And the training of birds and so on and so forth, it was something very important to them. And the lowest of animals were the insects. And so this is an ishara, and it is an indication that all animals can speak, from the highest of them to the lowest of them. Right? But the point of the story is what? The point of the story of the scholars, they say one of the greatest benefits we get from the story is that these ants, these very minuscule creatures, they understood that there is no survival for one of them except with the survival of all of them. The ant, he didn't say, "Oh, see, I wouldn't want to be here. I'm gone." "Oh, here comes Suleiman. Oh man, maybe I can find another colony of ants." They're toast, right? That's it. They're about to get trampled. And he knew that there is no survival for him except by the survival of his species, of his any colony, and so on and so forth. This is very problematic to the atheists. Charles Darwin himself, this was the reason that it took him 13 years to release his Origin of Species, because he couldn't wrap his mind around this one thing. Because his concept was revolving around the survival of the fittest, and so on and so forth, and the stinginess, the selfishness of creation. And he couldn't wrap his mind around altruism, and the concern that each species has for its own, and protecting its own, and the kindness and the mercy of the animals, and the lowering of the wing of the bird over its young, and caring for the young, and all these other aspects that go into this one thing. This is something that was problematic from the time of Darwin to today for the atheists. They still can't come up with a philosophical argument of why that is. So each aspect of guidance is something that by itself is a tremendous proof for the greatness of the Creator and the wisdom of the Creator, Tabarak wa Ta'ala, and the knowledge of the power and the knowledge of the Creator and the power of the Creator, and so on and so forth. So these are some examples, and I meant to get more into it, but these are some things that we can use and we can employ and we can benefit from. A person who wants further details of this sort of information, there's a beneficial book that was written by the author, Abdul Rahman al-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, that was translated a few years ago, that is called The Logical Evidences for Allah's Oneness and Perfection. And it covers over all three of these things: the belief in Allah, the belief in the prophets and the messengers, and the belief in the Day of Judgment, and the logical evidences that a person can use in calling people outside of the fold of Islam to Islam, and strengthening a person's faith. We ask Allah Tabarak wa Ta'ala أن يعلمنا ما جهلنا, and to teach us that which we are ignorant of, وينفعنا بما علمنا, and to allow us to benefit from that which we learn, ويزدنا علما, and to increase us in knowledge. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.